Hello, everybody, and welcome to the August meeting of the OWASP Global Board. Just calling the meeting to order and doing a roll call. And of course, I've got to try and find a way to set my screen up so I can actually see everyone who's here. So starting Celebrity Square style. I see Glenn, who has joined us.
Yay.
Glenn, are you present? Can you hear us? You might still be connecting to audio. Ah, there we go. Hello there. Next one down, I see Bill.
Here.
Then I see Ricardo.
Here.
And then I see Avi.
Here.
And I see Matt.
Here.
And I see Vandana.
Yes.
And I too am present. And that makes all 7 of us accounted for. We also have a number of guests, including some members, I hope, from the projects committee. I see these are still here. Just a reminder of the conflict of interest and antitrust statements. If there are topics on the agenda today that in some way pose a conflict of interest to you as a director, you need to let us know about that. And we can then have a discussion about whether you should be party to the discussion or whether you should be party to any votes that happen as a result of that discussion. Moose, is there anyone who has any conflicts of interest with today's agenda? There are actually quite a few items on the agenda.
Avi?
Avi, you are muted if you're trying to talk to us. Oh, double.
Hi, thank you. I would like to raise a point of order on the topic of conflict of interest. This is something that is, of course, mentioned on every board of directors meeting, and excuse me, and there has been conflict of interest. This is seems that there are several instances that there have been conflict of interest that have not been disclosed. Specifically, I'm referring to Glenn with regards to SKF and its current home and situation around that. So I would like to call that as point of order. I would like to ask for a censure on this, and I would very much like to hear Glenn an explanation for that.
Okay, so a censure being a formal reprimand from the board for failing to disclose conflict of interests. This does actually bring us to what the next item is, which changes the agenda. If this discussion around that conflict of interest wasn't on the agenda, Avi, so a change to the agenda would require a supermajority vote of the board to that effect.
Correct. As a point of order, it is unclear that's necessary, but yes, I would like to ask to put this on the agenda for now. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Sorry, who jumped in just before me?
Sorry, this is Ricardo.
Ah, perfect. Okay, so with a motion being made and a second in place, I will ask for votes on that.
Do you want a discussion?
Well, a vote about whether we want to add this to the agenda, right?
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise we're going to burn board time, and unless the board agrees as a supermajority that this is something we should be talking on.
Thank you.
I'll start at the bottom of the list. Vandana.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Bill.
Yes.
Avi.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Ricardo.
Yes.
I'm going to ask for your vote, Glenn, but I suspect that it might be a conflict of interest for you to vote on this. But Glenn?
Sorry, the connection was breaking up, so I couldn't hear exactly the full.
So Avi wants to modify the agenda to have a conversation around the conflict of interest that you have failed to provide us with previously. And the board would like to hear from you on that topic. So they'd like to change the agenda to add this as a topic of discussion tonight.
I can still not hear it correctly. I'm sorry. The connection is really bad.
Well, we already have a supermajority, Avi, to change the agenda, but I don't know whether it really works well for that. If Glenn can't hear us, it'll be difficult for Glenn to explain his actions.
Although we do hear him, maybe you can read the chat.
That may be true. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Okay. With 6 positive votes, Andrew, I think we're changing the agenda to add this discussion topic.
Yep. Did you want to do it now, or do you want to do it as the first order of business?
I would prefer that it was the first order of business so that we can keep the flow of the agenda.
And specifically because it is a point of order on the issue of the conflict of interest. It is important that it happens now.
What happens before that conversation occurs? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so with the agenda then modified to add a conversation around the accusation of a conflict of interest by Glenn not being disclosed and a call for censure in regards to that, we'll add that as the first agenda item, which will follow or precede the discussion on the bylaws. But Andrew, I'll hand over to you for the staff report.
Okay. Okay, it's a busy month. We've had several things going on in the order of importance. The slowdown in our corporate sponsorships, our corporate memberships, our membership. We actually lost, as you'll see in the membership things, about 100 members this month compared to last month. I think that's because we ran a 2-year and a 2-year membership drive when we did the September 2021 20th anniversary, and all of those are starting to age out. However, it's still a decrease of about 100. I really want you to think about maybe we may need to do a rebudget. So when we come to do the agenda for Amsterdam, I'd like to put that onto the agenda because if we're to break even this year, we're going to have to do that. If we're investing in this year, we don't need to do that. But I would like it to be an order of discussion in Amsterdam. DEF CON and Black Hat were very successful, but as per normal, these people all pretty much knew us. We did actually make contact with a few people who didn't know about us, which was sort of surprising. It might be worthwhile at Amsterdam as well for us to discuss what conferences should we be concentrating on next year. I believe it to be developer conferences, and maybe we just let the volunteers run DEF CON. There were more people at DEF CON than there were at Black Hat. Black Hat itself, we did get some leads. Dawn, have we got the leads yet?
The leads from Black Cat, yes.
Okay. And how many did we get?
It's around 500.
Okay.
I thought it'd be a lot more, so I'm assuming some people must not have scanned because we went through so much swag and different things. So
yeah. So yeah, Black Hat obviously does have that ability to gather some leads, and we will use that for our events, our corporate sponsorship, membership, and other things. We won't over spam people, but at the end of the day, I still think those vast majority of the people we met at Black Hat knew us, and therefore maybe it's worth investing that $10,000 to $15,000 in Black Hat somewhere else. Let's have a discussion in Amsterdam about where we appear. I think it'd be a very viable conversation, and let the volunteers run DEF CON by themselves. DEF CON itself is, there were a few hiccups, let's put it that way. that's a very pleasant way of saying that it was a bit challenging at the beginning. And I think maybe just letting the volunteers run it might be the better way of going. OWASP Netherlands, I met with the lawyers yesterday morning. Avi's coming back in. The plan is to take Grant to the offices of the lawyers, and so we can actually incorporate once we're in Amsterdam. That's going to be on the Thursday or the Friday. So hopefully we'll have the fully functional OWASP Netherlands entity by the time that we actually finish in Amsterdam. The bylaws I'll skip because we've got a discussion point on it. Charity CFO is on track for a September switchover. That looks like it's going to be happening. They're doing a trial version of the actual QuickBooks at the moment, so it should be possible for us to switch over. The OWASP bank accounts at Chase are now open and receiving funds from Stripe, and that's working fine. The 2022 external audit has started. They're doing field work at the moment. I am not aware of any issues so far. We have provided all the information, and thank you, Shelby, for providing the vast majority of this information in a timely fashion.
Absolutely.
Dawn, do you just want to have a quick couple of points here?
Okay, where are we? Okay, so the election process has started, based on this morning, we will have an election. I want to say we got about 9 people, but some don't qualify, or 7 people, some don't qualify. So we have at least 5, so there will be an election. The WASP Awards, I'll be reaching out to them tomorrow just to get their photos and how they want the name to appear on their awards, and those will get done next week. And we're just moving along with that.
Okay. I would encourage the board, as there seems to be a large changeover of personnel. When I was reviewing the candidates with Dawn yesterday, we don't have any women candidates. It would be nice if we could actually have a woman candidate or 2. If you could reach out to folks that you think who would be good board members, regardless of gender, regardless of location, that'd be awesome. We definitely want the field to have the best possible candidates for the members to pick from. With that, I'll pass over to Shelby.
All right, thank you. Okay, everyone seeing my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Wonderful. So I'm actually going to skip to year-to-date revenue. So revenue through July is $1,282,000 versus the budget of $1,040,000. So we're about $258,000 under the approved budget as of July. I'm actually going to go into that a little more detail. So for conference income, we're about $125,000 under budget. The biggest difference here was AppSec Israel. We budgeted $227,000 of income and brought in $119,000. Membership income, so corporate membership at $167,000 is $95,000 under the budget of $263,000. Individual membership is right on budget at $175,000. Project and technology income is $10,000 ahead of budget. And then donations and grants are around $43,000 under budget. Donations in July, part of that was a Crest Q2 payout that we received for $1,250. Okay. And if no one has any questions on revenue, I'm going to jump right into expenses. So expenses year to date through July are $1,536,000 versus the approved budget of $1,644,000. So we're around $108,000 under the approved budget year to date in expenses. So the biggest difference is here. Project spend is about 6,000 under budget. Events were slightly over budget by 12,000. Chapters and outreach are approximately 29,000 under budget. And then G&A had the biggest difference, under budget by 118,000. Okay, so with all that taken into account, we have a net loss for the year so far to date of 258,000. The approved net loss on the budget was 104,000. So the net loss is greater by 150,000. That's going to be due to a couple things. So that lower actuals for membership and membership income, as well as conference income, and then less spend for the G&A kind of offsets that. So net income is down from last year by about $374,000.
Shelby, just so I'm clear, it's the income from projects, the income from sponsorship for conferences and the general corporate sponsor income as well is down. That's where the two primaries are.
Exactly, yes. And the individual membership was right on budget. So it's just the corporate membership.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so for AR, the balance is around 224,000. So that's down 163,000 from last month. However, I do want to note 34% of that balance is over 90 days past due. So we want to look at the ones that are aging and see if we need to write off any or make any adjustments. And then 21% is less than 30 days past due.
Have we eaten to our bad debt reserve yet?
I can double check that for you. Let's see. I think we still have a balance in the bad debt reserve. Let me see.
Not that we want to use it, but it's nice to know that it's there.
Yes, it is there. I have a balance of 54,000 still in the bad debt reserve, so we can use some of those to write off any older accounts. Okay. So cash is at 2,276,000. So that's about 160,000 more than last month and 456,000 more than last year. So 25% in cash year over year. If you separate out AP and the project balances, we have around 2,062,000, which would equate to 11 months of reserve. And then with all expenses, that's just operating. Then if you include all expenses, it's 8.3 months of reserves, with the industry standard being 6 months.
That's good.
That's all I have for you, unless you have any additional questions. Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, in the interest of time, I think we'll skip the rest of the things. I would encourage the board to review the slides so that they are familiar with where the events are. Fundamentally, Singapore is still at a problem. If you wish to discuss Singapore now, we've got Kelly on the line. I would encourage us to think of Singapore as an investment at this point, or we actually have to push it into next year. We have very limited registrations, very limited corporate sponsorship. And so that is still a problem. Does the board wish to talk about Singapore?
Yeah, can we talk about it briefly?
Yep. Okay.
So
Kelly.
We talked about maybe pushing it off a year, but we weren't sure if the venue was going to let us do that or do it without some big penalty. Did we ever find an answer to that?
It does. Hi, Bill. We are looking to push it off to next year. Lauren and I spoke about this yesterday. Currently, registration is still very low. It's not where we want it. Like Andrew had mentioned, our exhibitors is also very low. from the sounds of it, from the venue, they haven't given us a definite answer, but it does not sound like we will get penalized. It's just, we're gonna be subject to what dates are available for 2024.
All right, and we still have what, 13 registrations?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
All right.
13.
And how many do we need to like break even on this?
Roughly 50 to 100. I mean, I can try to keep things as low as possible, but we also
Even
just
with
have-
just one exhibitor too, it's just,
So we only have one sponsor for the whole thing?
yes.
so far, yes.
All right.
We do have another company we have a couple companies that have expressed interest. One company that was waiting till the end of, or later this week, for a diamond and lanyard sponsorship, but even if they came on, that would only be, 2 exhibitors.
Yeah, well, then we're not really delivering much to them if there's going to be a total of 13 people there.
Exactly.
Who's the current exhibitor?
Iris Risk.
Okay.
Okay, so they are friendly, but it's not great return on
No.
investment for them.
No.
Have we considered opening registration to universities for free?
I have reached out to, I don't know how many universities in Singapore. It's like crickets. I don't understand it. We've we have asked Rio, even though he's in Japan, to help promote it. John DeLeo from New Zealand. We had a call with Tobias. He was helping to promote it. We're kind of stumped as to why registrations are so low. Yeah, I have not heard anything. I mean, I haven't ran a report on the 13 people. Maybe there's a student or two, but I had reached out months ago to, I don't know how many universities. I could go back in my notes and see, but yeah.
I have 2 questions. Are we working with anybody local community members in Singapore?
So the local Singapore chapter, the leaders were supposed to be helping to promote this. And just this morning, we received an email that they would give us a list of other organizations in the area. I said to Lauren, I just don't even feel like that's enough time. I can't see registrations jumping that much within a little bit over a month. I know Crest is helping. They've got a discount code, but they're supposed to be helping to promote it. And we still have only 13 registrations.
Okay, so having more active local communities is a point of discussion for us when we discuss events later on going forward. But for now, would it make sense, an alternative suggestion, would it make sense not postponing this conference, but making this virtual now? Is that an option? And postponing doing, with the venue, we'll postpone that part for next year?
That's an option we could do, for sure.
Does that make sense?
Certainly lowers the bar for attendance.
Lowers the bar for
Just as a-
attendance, you can lower the price, lowers the cost structure.
At least the speakers would still be able to speak, which is nice because I know some of them were really looking forward to it.
And very few of them want to show up to speak to a room of 13. Well, 4 really, if you split it between the 3 tracks.
Yes. We would have, we would figure out something. I mean, it's definitely an option, Avi, yes.
Yeah, I personally like that idea. I think maybe we just push the facility off for a year and try and build up momentum in Singapore with a virtual.
Okay.
Let's put together what that plan might look like for us, Lauren, and
Yes.
see if we can help you in some way there.
And hopefully the price point for the virtual, I don't know, I guess we'll have to refund the 13 people if it's virtual, but at least part of their funds. But
Yeah.
we're just gonna make sure that it also works out for the sponsors as well, right? So that ideally there's like at least 50 people going. all of us, if it's virtual, I mean, I can attend.
I don't know about that.
We'll
I'm
have
doing some work with
14.
Singapore and the time zone is bad.
Yeah,
I have to start work at 6 a.m., which for me is not a thing.
I can make anything work.
I look forward to seeing you and Grant there.
That's right. Well, now Grant can be a speaker.
A keynote.
That's right.
Okay. Just in the interest of time, it is 10:30. I'd like to hand the floor back to Grant. Is there any further questions, any further observations or assistance for the events? Okay, Grant.
Okay, so Glenn has let us know that it's hard for him to hear what's happening in the audio. So for the purposes of this, I will try and transcribe any questions that are asked into chat because he can read the chat. And then he will attempt to answer via audio or via chat. But Avi, as you called for this, do you want me to hand it back to you? Or do I want me to just open up as a general to everyone in the board with questions?
Just to make sure, did Glenn hear the topic that we're talking about now? I dropped from Zoom, dropped me out right after I wrote the message, so I didn't see if he saw that or responded.
I just asked that in the chat. Okay.
Okay. No idea. So Avi, do you want to just type it into the chat?
Yeah.
I also wish to note that we haven't received an updated director's conflict of interest questionnaire from Glenn at this point. I did ask via email back in July. We still haven't received it.
Okay, so there's two questions here on the conflict of interest. The first is Avi's comment that there've been a number of topics discussed in meetings and Glenn hasn't disclosed that there was a conflict. And then the second one is that you're still waiting on a conflict of interest form from Glenn, an updated one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So who wants to lead the discussion? Avi?
I am typing as fast as I can go on my little laptop.
So the problem is Glenn can't hear what we're saying.
Right.
So he's having to read, which means Avi is having to type the questions.
Yes, it's really parts of it. So sometimes I hear it and sometimes it's really breaking up.
Cool. So for the purpose of the recording, I will read Avi's questions to Glenn. Glenn, we're discussing conflict of interest in some instances of your non-disclosure around SSP, SKF, and leaving OWASP. Glenn replied okay to that. I then said, apparently you also, Andrew, an updated form and have done so for a while. And then Avi asked, I asked for a censure and explanation from you as to what is going on and why there was no disclosure. So hopefully you can hear us, Glenn, or you can see that and you'll be able to provide us with an answer. We can hear you, by the way. That seems to work quite well.
Yeah, now it goes okay. No breakup so far. Can you also understand?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I remember I got the email from Andrew a while ago, but I was still waiting for, I think, like Dawn to contact me to fill in the new form or something like that. And as I didn't receive anything, I forgot about it, to be honest. So that's about that. Let me think. Then the other thing, SSP. So what is with that? Well, what is the question there?
It's really around what's happening to SKF and are you being employed or part-time employed or contracted to the Linux Foundation or SSP?
Yeah, so one thing clear, so I'm not part of SSP or anything. So yeah, that's why I couldn't, or I didn't understand the question. What that had to do with me. The only thing is that I'm started like, what was it, a month ago, something like that, for making content for the Linux Foundation.
As a paid employee?
That's correct.
Okay. And we've had a series of multiples of conversations around Linux Foundation and some of the Linux Foundation organizations like OpenSSF and SSB, which are a part of the Linux Foundation. Seeing as that you are becoming an employee of Linux Foundation, shouldn't this have been disclosed as part of, or even before those conversations and discussions around that?
No, because where's the conflict of interest in that then? I was already part of OpenSSF before it was OpenSSF. So I'm not sure why this is brought up right now, because this is something that's happening. I'm part of it like for the last 2.5 years. So,
well, there's a difference, Glenn, between being a volunteer and working on projects and being a paid employee. And we've had multiple conversations where this was definitely an issue of conflict, especially it kind of culminates in moving SKF very like, throwing a pull request over leaving OWASP. And we heard about this from a third party, and just taking an OWASP project, an OWASP flagship project, and moving to Linux Foundation. So this
yeah,
to me,
okay,
it's kind of obvious.
now it goes about SPF. So let me elaborate on that. So as you notice, we did the call for the board to do something for the projects. That was like 9-10 months ago, and really nothing happened. Same with the strategic vision that we should, carry on and come to, which we also didn't. As a result, projects are leaving. Why did I sign that paper for the clarification is because I cannot do SKF anymore. So I made a decision, or we get some serious help, like get from the OWASP board some strategic funds and something like that, and help, or I'm going to stop doing SKF. And that's actually what we did. We stopped doing SKF and the OWASP. So that's why I did my pull request. And that's about it, actually. So, yeah.
Avi, you've got your hand up, but before I hand it to you, just for clarification, Glenn, when you say you stopped SKF, you've stopped SKF within the OWASP Foundation, but you have created an identical project or a forked project inside the Linux Foundation under OpenSSF.
No, that's not correct. That's not correct. They're starting a whole new platform and building it up from scratch with the same idea and concept. But yeah, not with me.
And the materials
I'm not developing it.
The materials that you are creating, those materials are to be used in the new SKF style infrastructure?
Probably. I'm also not sure about that because again, it's not my call.
Okay, Avi, I just wanted to clarify that. Your hand is still raised.
I don't feel like it was clarified, but before that, a point of order, just to set the record straight. You said the open letter, and we did absolutely nothing, and it's clear that is not true. We didn't do nothing. I wouldn't say we did everything that we would hope to do, but we did far more.
Sorry, no.
Glenn,
I don't agree with that. Please
Glenn,
don't.
excuse me.
Don't now
Sorry.
try to.
Glenn,
No.
Glenn, I have the floor. Glenn, I have the floor. Saying that we did absolutely nothing is an outright misrepresentation at best, because we didn't do nothing. You have been part, Glenn, you have been part of multiple meetings talking about allocating budget, talking with the projects committee, gathering needs, resources, requirements, allocating more resources, whether technical or budgetary, saying
exactly.
We didn't do
and
enough.
where did our other flagship project go to? It's also gone. and maybe
Glenn,
others will
so the
also
one-
leave
Glenn,
because
saying
of
we
that.
didn't do
So
enough. Glenn, saying we
we
didn't do
didn't
enough would
help
be
the people
fair.
that needed help. Yeah, and we didn't come up with, hey, look, here is what you can do. Yeah, we didn't do anything. And also for me, if I keep doing SKF, I would also end up with a burnout because it's too much for me to handle alone. That's why I stopped the development of the SKF project. So it's still there, right? It's still open. It's still in the GitHub repo. But yeah, I'm not going to do anything about it anymore. So
First of all, Glenn, saying we didn't do enough is something that I could absolutely agree with you. Should we do more? Definitely. Saying we did nothing is just completely disconnected from everything we've been doing for many months.
No, Afi, where is our strategic response then for the OWASP board and what we were going to work on? There's still nothing. Same like last year where we were supposed to get together and get the strategic goals.
And every time we get together, somebody sidetracks the conversation, saying where is the one thing
with
doesn't mean
how
we
many
did nothing.
people? So you now blame it on
We
one
had a-
person for sidetracking?
We had a strategic response.
I don't
Glenn.
accept this. No, I
Glenn.
don't accept it. What you're now doing? No.
You don't have to accept it, but that's the reality. Saying I don't accept reality is kind of childish.
All right, gentlemen.
That you're now putting out here. No, I don't tolerate this. It's totally bullshit.
One at a time, please. One at a time. Glenn, the one thing we haven't done, which affects the SKF clearly, and which affected SAP, is be able to employ the lead developers on those projects to continue working on them. But for projects like SAM, we have found funds to help them do things they wanted to do or that they needed to do.
No, we
That's
gave
true
them
for-
a tiny little bit. They asked way more, and we couldn't help them.
Well, they've asked for a bit, and we've given them a bit, and they will ask for more, and we will give them more. And the piece they have now, they can continue working with. And we've also helped Cyclone DX where they've needed the help. So it's not true that we haven't helped the projects. What we haven't done is provided funding to employ developers, which is the concern that the SKF and that SAP had.
Well, if you tell that to yourself and sleep well, that's fine, but I don't agree with that. So maybe next question.
All right. Okay. Moving on. I wanted to get a bit more clarity around what Grant started asking you about SKF. So you say basically what you're moving to Linux Foundation is not SKF, it's a brand new thing. So you shut down the SKF project and creating a new similar one over there, just to be clear?
Yeah, I think like a platform for learning that's open source.
It actually sounded, I'll be sorry, Glenn, I don't mean to speak for you, but the way I understood what Glenn said was that SKF or a platform for learning was being created by the Linux Foundation, by the OpenSSF. But Glenn himself is not involved in building the platform. Is that accurate, Glenn?
Well, again, it's also not OpenSSF.
Okay, so it's within some other entity within the Linux Foundation?
No, it's as far as I know, it's the Linux Foundation who's building something like that. And
Okay.
again, I'm only making content and I don't know where the content is going to end up. So that's about that. Because again, I can't deal running SKF all by myself. I did that for the last 9 years, together with my brother. My brother can also not help at the moment because he unfortunately also has no energy and, suffers from a sort of burnout. So basically, I've been doing it for the last 2-3 years. And yeah, like I said, I don't have time and energy to do it anymore.
Understood. So just one last point of clarity. What is the status of SKF right now?
Well, archived, like I said, it's still on GitHub and everywhere, but I'm not working on it or anything. It was also in a very bad shape because last year I couldn't update the front end and all those parts. So calling it a flagship would also be a disgrace.
So is the project still active? Just looking for leaders? You left the leaders? Did you shut down the project? I'm just still not really clear on the actual status of the SKF right now.
The status is I'm not working on it anymore, and so is my brother.
So there was a pull request was it to make the project leave or to shut it down? I was unclear on what exactly.
Yeah, like I said, I just made a pull request to remove it from the OWASP website and the references to it. Because like I said, I couldn't even update the website, the application itself in the last, year. So it's broken, it's not updated. And yeah, like I said, that's why, I also signed that paper. Had a proper process in place for projects to actually ask for, significant funds to do projects like the SKF. Because it's not going to help a 10K here or 10K there, because, to be honest, every 3-4 months, only running the whole platform on the infrastructure cost is 15K.
So, okay, I completely understand that. So I completely understand that, Glenn, but I'm still trying to understand the status of SKF as a project right now. I understand that you and your brother left as leaders. Where does that leave the project? Is it still active? Obviously, you didn't delete the repo, but.
No, because the repo is in my public repository like it always was, and there it still is. So there's the status.
Okay, so a couple weeks ago, Grant shared a pull request that was not from the project itself. It was just removing it from the project list.
Correct.
Yeah, it was an update to the SKF web pages rather than to the SKF project itself, the backend project. So it's not the code, it's the website.
So, but you still say you still kind of unilaterally said SKF is no longer part of OWASP, which is different from you and the other leaders not working on it, which I understand.
Yes.
All right. And this had nothing to do with the move to Linux Foundation?
Well, how do you say it? I guess not. I mean, even if they didn't want to build something similar open source, we would still have stopped the project. Because like I said, it's too much of a burden to continue.
So Glenn, would it be possible for the project committee to do a project review, demote it to not flagship status as per the normal thing, and do a call for volunteers?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll ask the project committee to do that.
I mean, if Glenn isn't doing the project, then the project is still an OWASP project. It should go through that process normally. What I was trying to get to the grounds of, though, Glenn, is we don't understand what's going on. We don't know, because this is the first time you've had this conversation with us. So we don't know why the pull request was created. We don't know what your intention was. And with it following directly on the ZAP move, and with individuals in the on the leaders list having conversations around, more projects are leaving for the Linux Foundation, and then highlighting SKF as one of them, it raises questions, which is why we wanted to understand that. And especially as a board member, it's really, I mean, we expect that you come and talk to us about these things. We shouldn't be blindsided by them.
Yeah, like you blindsided me in this questionnaire and conversation. Nice to have double standards, eh? But okay. No, I did actually talk about it before. Like I said, I really needed help. That's why I signed also that letter, for reasons like this, because I can't do it alone. Again, we were not really helped with that, unfortunately. And we decided, to just stop it. And now luckily there's another team that said like, hey, you know, this might be interesting to do and continue on. And yeah, they're building something like that now. And like I said, we were already walking and having the idea to stop the project way longer before, because like I mentioned, the last 1.5 years, we actually didn't make any new updates because yeah, it's too hard to do it alone with no support, no help. And this is not the, you know, like you said, you didn't hear anything about it. Maybe that's, yeah, also quite interesting actually, but we mentioned it a lot of times to a lot of people, and me signing the letter was also in my explanation and one of the other boards, the meetings that we had, that we need help because this is not sustainable anymore.
So Glenn, Avi, I see your hand is raised, but while you ask your question, Avi, can I ask Andrew that you open the SKF page up, because there's still a public page for SKF. So not the GitHub page, but the securityknowledgeframework.org webpage.
Yeah, and also the application is still running, but again, also there, we don't have enough funds anymore to actually run the application. So probably that will also at the end of the month will, yeah, shut down, because again, with no help, no funds, you know, we can't do this alone.
So I completely understand that. I actually have a question, not for Glenn as board of directors. I have a question for Glenn as project manager. Have you submitted a request for funding or resources or anything like that that got refused? And again,
No,
I
because-
understand the issues around that.
Of course, I was also a treasurer. I know what amount of money we have in the last year. And it is a bit like the SAM story, that to actually do what we wanted to do, we would need around like what 400,000 to really get what we wanted to achieve with it. And that is a yearly 400,000 euro probably thing that will have to happen. So why would I request for something that I know that is like not doable? And again, like for Sam, it worked out to give like a tiny bit of money, like 10K, to help them further. But FAS, like I said, it doesn't even cover like 3 months of running the whole infrastructure.
But to be clear, the 400K was to pay developers full-time to work on developing it, right?
Yes, for example, the infrastructure, developers, lab development, creation, all.
Does anybody else?
Donnie.
Sorry,
Sorry,
it was breaking up.
Who's that?
Donnie's
You
on
were
the phone.
Donnie
up.
here.
Hi, Donnie.
So I would like to add that any project that joins on to OWASP is owned by OWASP. So OWASP has the legal say of what direction the project is going to go.
Okay.
Well, I think the question here is not really about what the project's future is. It's really around a board member not being clear and transparent in his actions. I think that's where this basic question came from, though.
Yeah, and I feel anyone from the community is welcome to fork a project from OWASP.
And from outside the community too, yes. It's
Yeah.
open source, right? That's the point of open source.
Yeah. So if there's anything else I can answer, I'd be happy to answer if that's my point of view.
So Andrew, I'm guessing you asked Donnie to join the call for one of the further discussions, right?
That's correct. We've got a project discussion coming up.
Okay, so please stick around,
Okay.
Donnie. Don't go anywhere.
Sure.
Getting back to the current topic though, does anybody else have any questions for Glenn?
Yeah, I got kicked out. I'm back.
Does anybody else have any questions for Glenn? Anything specific they want some answers to, or they'd like to understand? It looks like my video has given up again.
So I will follow up with Dawn and Glenn on the updated questionnaire, and it's up to you guys to do what you want to do here.
Well, Avi has asked for a censure, which is an official reprimand from the board for Glenn's actions. Does the board feel that that is appropriate? That that is sufficient? That that is required? Hearing a lot of silence, and it worries me that maybe my microphone isn't working.
I do hear you, Grant. But I said mine.
I think it'd be worthwhile to put the motion into chat and get people to vote on it. It seems like the discussion is ready.
Okay, so I'm guessing.
Grant, are you typing that in or should I?
You're welcome to. I was typing, but
Okay, go for it.
so something like that, Avi.
So then we
I'll
can
read
also
out loud.
do Grant.
Sorry, what was that, Glenn?
We can also do something for you then, Grant. Like last year with the whole Accenture thing. That you didn't
He
disclose
last
that?
year he disclosed at every time. He raised it every time, and when it was relevant, he stepped back.
Oh,
He
I
always-
brought it up. Email because there was asking for money that wasn't even confirmed. But okay, I see. That's fine.
I would love to have a point if you could point me at that email. I don't remember that happening, but I mean, my memory is not the thing that I would rely on.
Well, mine is.
I'm
Anyway,
more than happy for you to raise that, Glenn. And then we'll show all the emails around that topic.
The motion reads as follows: the OWASP Global Board officially reprimands and censures Glenn Tencott for this failure to disclose a conflict of interest when discussing matters concerning projects potentially moving to the Linux Foundation, and for failing to disclose his own relationship with the Linux Foundation as a paid employee.
So do we have a second?
Who motions this?
This
Is
is
it my
my
motion?
My motion.
Okay,
Thank you for typing it.
then I'll second it.
Thank you. Shall
Okay.
we vote on this, or are there any more questions or comments from the board?
think we can vote.
I do want to point out that it looks like we lost Glenn. Oh,
Oh,
he's
he's
back.
back. He did say that he did mention that the connection there is very bad.
Yeah,
And
sorry,
and
I got kicked out again. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can attest
Okay.
for Kenyan infrastructure not necessarily being quite up to call standards. Glenn, did you see the motion? Have you read the motion? Did you hear it?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Then with the motion and second, I will call for a vote.
Moment, please. Vandana saying that she has a comment here.
I don't know. It just does not feel right to me. That's all.
That's okay.
Like everyone has their own opinion about it.
Sorry, Vandana, that it doesn't feel right that the board should censure Glenn, or
Yeah, I think it needs a little more discussion. Just my 2 cents. Glenn has given 9 years to OWASP project and OWASP, and I think this needs a little more discussion. Just my 2 cents. I think we need to hear more from his perspective. We need to discuss more. And obviously we don't want SKF to go to Linux Foundation or any other place for that matter. We can try and do our best, what we can do in our purview. This is what I believe.
So Vandana, the SKF has already gone to the OpenSSF, at least according to their own website. The question here is whether Glenn disclosed his actions to the board and whether we feel that he acted properly towards us.
Point of
I
order,
understand.
not towards us, towards the
Towards the
community.
foundation.
Vandana,
Yeah,
is there anything
just to say
specific?
one thing. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just want to say, just to say one thing, like I said in other board meetings, that we are working with OpenSSF because they also wanted to have an education platform, etc. But again, we're already part of that, like what, 2.5 years. And I mentioned multiple times also in board meetings, we should do more with OpenSSF, work with them together. So again, I don't know how or what we're.
But you have taken OWASP off of the Security Knowledge Framework website, and only OpenSSF is left there now, very prominently.
Yes, I could also remove that because again, also there, we will not work on SKF anymore.
But the thing is, you didn't, though, Glenn. I don't understand why you made any of these decisions without talking to us.
Because again, like I said, and that's why I got so, well, emotional, because we were talking about strategic things. We're talking about how we can fix things for projects and funding, and we like doing that. So I'm really frustrated. And now I'm at a point where SKF, as I did it for the last 8-9 years, yeah, will stop to exist.
And that is absolutely a tragedy, but that isn't really what we're discussing. That might be what caused what we're discussing, but I don't really think it excuses what has happened.
I think in the interest of time, it might be worthwhile calling for a vote. I'm just trying to find out what the bar is for censuring. I'm reasonably certain it's 2/3.
That's correct.
Okay, Vandana, you felt more discussion was required. Is that something you'd like to do in an executive meeting of the board, or would you?
I think so. I just feel so. We need more discussion with Glenn on this, and then we should take an action, like or take a call. Just my 2 cents. And I'm open. I'm just the odd one out, but yeah, this is my feeling.
Does the rest of the board feel that way? Bill, are you ready to vote, prepared to vote? Would you-
Yeah, I'm prepared to vote, but I could also wait and discuss it. I'm good either way. I mean, I think fundamentally it comes down to Glenn doesn't see it as a conflict of interest, and I personally do. And so the vote is kind of, I think, one of what do we think it's a conflict of interest or not, and what should he have disclosed? I mean, Glenn now works for an organization that has taken two of our flagship projects, or maybe not taken is a strong word, but they now have two of our flagship projects. And so I think that just in and of itself is probably a conflict of interest. He's on our board, and yet there's this migration of our projects, and maybe there's more that are on their way. And so I don't know, I find that concerning, I guess. And I feel like that just being an employee of the Linux Foundation is like almost a conflict of interest in and of itself that should be mentioned literally every time we have a board meeting. But that's my personal opinion.
You want to respond to that, Glenn? I see you unmuted.
Sorry, I got again a connection breakup. To be honest, I really find it very sad that you guys blindsided me like this and asking all the questions without, asking me upfront about it. I have really a bad connection. I wish could talk more about it or more in depth, but yeah, again, I didn't hear the question, so whatever. I really have no idea what's going on now, but okay.
Matt,
Okay, guys, you can still hear me?
Yeah, we can. Sorry,
Yes.
Glenn.
Okay.
Matt, your thoughts on whether we should move to vote now, or Glenn, when do you return to the land of Signal again?
Next week.
Next week.
I have two questions, actually. One, what is the effect of censure? Just so I'm clear on that, because I'm not 100% clear on that. I have a concept, but what is the net effect of censure?
It's, as my parents would say, it goes on the permanent record, and no actual punishable action unless such action is voted on. And the censure in itself actually has nothing else other than that, other than setting very clear boundaries to what we expect for proper behavior from board members. That's really the sum of it.
That's fair. I wasn't quite sure the ramifications of that entirely, particularly with their bylaws.
A censure can include additional things, but I didn't add that here. It can have a follow-on vote of no confidence. Correction, I said, Andrew, a censure itself is just a majority vote, unless it includes expulsion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is not as written. Expulsion does require, obviously, supermajority. Just to be clear.
So, Glenn, I don't know if you heard any of that.
Yep.
So if the board does vote on the censure and you are censured by the board, it is an official reprimand. It has no effect on your standing as a board member. It does lay the line in the sand for what we expect from board members in future. And it does call you to attention that you have a duty to this foundation because you are still on this board. And I understand that you are frustrated, that you are upset, but you still have a responsibility to the people who voted for you.
Yep, and that's why I'm here. Even though I stopped working on the SKF OWASP project, I'm still present at the board meetings.
With that being said, Vandana, are you happy to move this to a vote?
Sure.
Okay. So with the motion made and seconded, I'm going to ask for a vote from the members of the board. And I will start with Avi.
Yes.
And I will, well, technically, Glenn, you can vote on this. I don't know that you should, though.
No, abstain.
Bill,
Yes.
Ricardo,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Vandana,
No,
and it is a yes from me. Glenn, the board officially censures you. I do want to see you back and more involved with this board. I need to know that you have our back. I need to know that you care about what happens to the foundation, that you are still out there fighting for the future of projects. They need it now more than ever.
Well, honestly, I feel like I'm fighting this board.
But you shouldn't be, because this board wants to help projects. We just need to focus and get it done.
Well, I am a
Unfortunately-
project. I'm a flagship project. I had one, right? Not anymore, but I can say you no. But let's do that in another discussion, not now.
Glenn, will you be in Amsterdam?
Yes, like I said, I will still do and be present and trying to do my board duties. Although I can't do the OWASP project anymore.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Okay.
Okay, with that done with that item of business done with, are we happy to return to the existing agenda?
Yep.
Okay,
think so.
Given the time, I think we should push table this discussion here on developer outreach, Black Hat and DEF CON to Amsterdam. Would anyone support that tabling?
Yes.
Okay. The discussion of the bylaws, we are waiting upon about 7 directors to get back to us. We know most of them, and I will hassle them personally on Twitter, Signal, and other places. The only one who's really in doubt is Mark Curfey. I will hassle Mark personally on Signal and see if he'll just do it.
Andrew?
Yeah.
Sorry. I sent out a bunch of stuff yesterday through different, Avi's helping me get some granted. We got another one today. So we got a few more going to lined up shortly.
Okay. Yeah, the lawyers are very keen on having every director that we've ever had being able to sign this document with the correct dates. And that's where it's standing at this very moment. So I might reach out to the board if we're struggling to reach certain people, because I think, people, some directors know the previous directors and might be able to leverage personal contacts.
okay.
Okay, moving on to the discussion of the state of projects. I think that's very relevant, and Grant, the floor is yours.
So I wasn't actually present during the formation of the agenda. What was the topic here specifically, Avi? So this is I guess this is the topic around the fact that the SSP now exists, and that now multiple, more than one project have moved from OWASP to the Linux Foundation. And we need to figure it out. This is a large part of my proposed agenda, which I realized I didn't hit send on the email before joining this call, but I was literally working on it right before this call. The agenda for Amsterdam, or for Den Haag. So a large portion of the agenda is devoted to what we are going to do about projects and how we're going to find the funding to support them properly. Also about the line we're going to draw in the sand. What is it we do fund? What is it we don't fund? What makes us different from the OpenSSF?
I think one of the other things that needs to be discussed is the exiting of projects. I think we should be very clear to project leaders that they are welcome to fork their projects outside. There's nothing we can do to stop them. It's part of the open source It's just that we don't actually make it very clear in the project policy about how that's happening. So far, we've had a couple of projects just decide to take the repos and go, which isn't ideal, because if there's volunteers still working on a project at OWASP, those volunteers will need to fork the project and come back, and it's a lot of additional work.
Yeah,
and we
the
might
barrier
lose
for them to continue it is
Yeah.
higher. Yeah, it is definitely a part of the the discussion that needs to be had. But I mean, as much as we need to talk about that, I think it's far more important that we talk about what needs to happen to avoid projects needing to go down that route in the first place.
Yes.
Javi, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, is Donnie still on the call? He mentioned earlier about projects being owned by OWASP, and in principle, that's a good idea, except that that's not always the case with licensing, repo ownership, resources, websites, domains, and a lot of other stuff like that. So is Donnie here?
Yeah, I'm still on the call.
Awesome. So this is something I've been discussing. I think I discussed with you previously. I mentioned to Bjorn. I definitely talked with Kevin recently about this. Things like IP ownership, copyright assignment, domains, where the repo lives, all that stuff needs to be a lot clearer and better defined by the project's policy, and maintained and tracked by the projects committee. I think is that right? Does everybody agree with me about that?
I mean,
my video is also crashing out.
I agree that if it can be clearer, it is. But I mean, I'm a project leader, and when I brought my project over to OWASP, I signed over everything. So it's pretty much a, globally exclusive. All rights were granted to OWASP, and if a project wants to fork from OWASP, they can. But OWASP reserves the name. OWASP ZAP is still going to always be OWASP ZAP unless the lawyers say or the board approves that ZAP is no longer with OWASP and they can use whatever name they want. But every project has to sign that document that's giving full rights to the whole name and project, everything. And if a person that's working on the project wants to leave, they're welcome to leave the project. That's more of an individual person issue.
So ZAP is actually a good case in point, because OWASP did not own the IP of ZAP. Copyright was not assigned. Did not own the domain name or anything like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And apparently this was compliant with project's policy. Now I completely understand, project leaders, especially for an established project, you want to have the flexibility, you want to have the thing not get locked in before. So these are all things that I think need to be worked out by the projects committee and then update the policy. That's my opinion, at least. Speaking as a single member, not as a consensus here as within instruction. Does this make sense?
Yeah. I'd be willing to do this on a public discussion on the OWASP project committee GitHub discussion board. I think it would be good to have the public involved, and I think it would be good. So I agree with doing it.
I think what's key here is that the rules need to be clear for everyone bringing a project to OWASP or starting a project within OWASP. I don't necessarily want to see it that IP is assigned to OWASP. I just want to see that we have clarity on what does happen, and that we as a community agree that that's what should be happening. So I don't want to push down a line of this should be the case. I mean, we're not the Linux Foundation. We're not the Mozilla Foundation. We are OWASP. We are different. And because we are different, we can have different rules. But I'd like those rules to be community driven, and I'd like them to be clear for everyone and applied equally to everyone.
Agreed.
Sounds good. Yep.
So
I will help with that. Yeah. Sorry.
One other consideration too is that whatever we determine or the community-driven rules end up being, there's likely to be a difference between the projects that exist today and projects that come in under that banner. So there'll have to be some sort of reconciliation between those two, because I will be pleasantly surprised if they happen to line up, because I was on the project committee years ago, and we had similar issues to where there was kind of unclear boundaries, honestly.
Well, there's no way they'd line up because there's different rules within different projects today. So, and those are in conflict with each other. So,
Yeah, there may need to be a retroactive agreement that projects sign.
yeah, or you know, a discussion with the project leaders around. I mean, it's anybody who isn't compliant with that, with whatever the decision is or the direction of the decision is, should be involved in the conversation to reach that consensus.
Yeah. Cool. Let's discuss it on the public GitHub discussion board that we have set up there. I think it'd be a good place for us to collaborate on this policy.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything else for Don? I see you on you've joined via phone, so.
Yeah, I'm don't agree with the Zoom policies of recording and using our data, biometric data, to train their AI systems. So I'm joining by phone. I tried to join with the link NYC, but I was getting kicked out and seemed to have a denial of service on the link NYC. I couldn't join again, so I had to go to another one. The same thing happened on that one, so it's kind of weird.
Well, I'm glad you managed to join the call. Thank you very much. If there's no other questions for Donnie, then I think we can let him go.
Just cool. Thanks. And just want to chime in on the RFI for the White House. I have a document together ready for Andrew to sign and send if he'd like to do that. Otherwise, we could do them individually as projects too, or I could vouch for the project committee and do it. So any thoughts on that?
They're looking for one response from each organization, and there are, I think succinct is going to be better.
So funnel it through Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew, you saw Sharif's suggestion or offer.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Just let me know any feedback on that. Be happy to revise it to make it work.
Thank you. Just share it with me, and we'll get it happening.
Yeah, it's on the Canvas of Slack. It's only like 3. It's one of them today in the Canvas and Slack.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Donnie.
Thanks, Donnie.
Given that we've decided to table the discussion on developer outreach, Black Hat and DEF CON, do we actually need a majority vote from the board to do that?
I think it'd be worthwhile just recording it. Yes.
Okay, I think we did get a majority of hands up, but for the record, those in favor of tabling the motion or the discussion around developer outreach, Black Hat and DEF CON? Harvey, yes.
Aye.
Matt?
Yes.
Ricardo?
Yes.
Glenn? Come back to Glenn. Bill?
Yes.
Vandana?
Yes.
Glenn, can you hear us?
Maybe put it in the chat.
That's a good plan. So it's a motion to, or just moving to table the discussion on developer outreach.
Yes, he says yes.
Cool, perfect. Thank you. And that's a yes from me as well. And I believe I did manage to catch everyone. You definitely have a supermajority there, Andrew.
Yes.
So reforming the diversity committee. Normally there's a name associated with each of these items, although that's usually because there's a motion attached to them. Who brought the reforming the diversity committee as a agenda item?
That was me.
Cool, thank you, Harvey.
So just a touch of background. The Diversity and Outreach Committee, I think this was in September. I think we have that here. June was voted. Sorry, it was September of last year. They wanted to merge, and therefore there was a formal motion by the board that was approved by the board to dissolve the two existing independent committees and reform as a new Outreach Diversity or Diversity Outreach Committee as a new committee on the condition of obviously submitting a new appropriate charter that covers the scope of both. This was never done, unfortunately, despite repeated asks. And this was in June, we formally dissolved it to accept that both those committees technically went away, but there is a need for both of those, really. The Outreach Committee was part of the Black Hat discussion, developer conferences discussion as part of that. But the Diversity Committee there's still a need for this, and it still stands on its own, assuming that it won't be wrapped up in the Outreach Committee as well. I believe there are several candidates in our community that would love to pick this up and take it forward. It's more of a discussion point here.
Okay, so essentially, we nearly a year later do not have a charter in place for this newly formed committee. As such, the responsibilities of the committees fall back to the board because that's how that works. Which means, Avi, you should be out there reaching out to developers and increasing the diversity within our community, which kind of the next point on the agenda deals with as well. But until, because the board can't be doing that all the time, we do need to form a committee for these things. One of the items on the agenda for Amsterdam is what committees are and how they should be given powers and how we should ensure that we have the right committees doing the right work. I would agree that these two committees are necessary, but I don't think that we can form them here today. We don't have individuals representing those committees who would like to form them.
Precisely. This is more a call to action from the board to find those candidates and volunteers to kickstart those committees. Myself included.
Noted. Anyone else have any comments on that? Well, with nothing further to say there. The next item down is a motion to strengthen the diversity of the board and protect its independence. I believe that there are two motions in here, one of which has been iterated on a couple of times since the minutes were created originally. Avi, do you want to grab the latest version? I saw some edits that need to be approved or accepted or not accepted.
Yep, I'm pasting here in chat.
Okay, so the first motion, I think, and I've had a fairly long conversation with Avi about this, I think the first motion is actually wrapped up in the bylaws of the foundation. So the future bylaws of the foundation determine what is necessary for structural changes to the board. So because they exist in the bylaws and because those bylaws are in the process of being approved, I don't think that there's anything we should be doing today as a stopgap for that until those new bylaws are approved.
I have a question.
Sure.
If I may.
Absolutely.
It says here, no two directors while associated with the same external organization. What is defined as an external organization?
So not OWASP, not the OWASP Foundation. So
okay, because you can get into a little trouble there. So let's just take, for instance, I think we have a majority of people here who are living in America or understand their politics. If I'm a Republican and somebody else is a Republican, that's an external organization.
Yep.
So I think the issue there is the associated, not the organization part.
So should we be more specific about that? Maybe serve in a position or? Because I think it would be quite easy for two people to kind of be in the same organization, depending on the size of it.
Well, considering the US is fairly split down the middle, the odds are that there's at least 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats in any group is fairly large, with a large enough selection.
So I think the issue there is not the word organization in that example, Ricardo. If you had 2 members of the RNC, not Republicans, not voting Republican, but 2 members of the RNC, that might be I think would be an issue there. Would you agree with that? So the issue here is with the word associated and not organization, unless you have another, at least in that example.
I can think of an example of 2, like at one point in time, I was part of the ISSA on their board of directors. So if I was on their board and this board, even though we're very copacetic, affiliated, similar mission groups, could we not have anybody else in 2? You get what I'm saying? Like, I think there's like a fiduciary aspect to this that may be important, or the ability to drive change that is impactful to OWASP.
Matt, are you saying it would be a problem if there were 2 directors that are both directors of OWASP and of ISA at the same time? You're saying that is a problem, or an example that is not a problem?
I would suggest it's not a problem if they're a minor player. Like, I was the membership director for the Austin chapter when I used to live in Austin. I had no real influence over anything. I just tried to get more membership for ISSA. There's a mild conflict of interest that should probably be disclosed if I was on the board here, but I don't think that should preclude me from being on the board. If in this hypothetical case, because I'm no longer in Austin, but I was just thinking through like similar things to what Ricardo had said. This is not a political thing. This is like a very common that there are related organizations that active people in the security community might be a member of.
So one of the things that actually affects the OpenSSF is the relationship between certain firms, such as Red Hat and IBM. IBM completely owns Red Hat, and yet OpenSSF has a board member from Red Hat, has a board member from IBM. Would that be precluded here?
As written, I would argue yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't understand if they're from 2 different companies, why would that be precluded?
Well,
I missed.
Red Hat is a division of IBM.
Ah, right.
Yeah, Red Hat is fully owned by IBM.
I would agree with that. Yeah. And Microsoft and GitHub. Yeah.
Yeah. Another
Funny
example.
similar cases, right?
I'm pretty sure they have those 2 as well.
I mean, the spirit of this is to prevent a large group of people from one organization coming and taking over the OWASP board. Maybe what we need added to this is just some sort of, someone makes a complaint to the board and then the board investigates, and you know what I mean? Because it's going to be like, you won't know it till you see it, right? I don't think we could wordsmith this in a way where either we'd wordsmith it in a way where we eliminate the obvious, like, oh, I'm an ISSA, you're an ISSA, now one of us has to quit the board. But then it would water it down so much that it wouldn't have any effect anymore. So
maybe the decision needs to be made at the point of determining eligibility for election.
what happens if afterwards there's a conflict though, then?
Yeah, so that's the second paragraph for that.
Yeah.
So can I break this down for a bit? Because I feel like there's like one small part of this that is the sticking part, right? The first statement, no 2 directors may serve on the board while employed at the same company, corporation. If your main employer is the same as another director, is there consensus that it's clear and agreed? Is there consensus on that part?
I'd say yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to jump to the end. Okay, going to jump to the end. If we had multiple directors from, let's say, the Israel chapter, right, or multiple directors from the London chapter or whatever, big chapters will often have multiple candidates. Is there an issue with having multiple directors from the same chapter?
We literally had that scenario when Sharif and I were on the board together.
Yep, and Owen and Greg. Did you find, Grant, from your experience, this is before my time on the board, did you find any issues with that? Because from the outside, it kind of doesn't look great, shall we say?
I think that if as a board we were voting on something that would give the London chapter some advantage or something, then both Sharif and I would have chosen to exclude ourselves from the conversation and from the vote. But that's a specific instance of a conflict of interest. I don't think that being from the same part of the world and speaking the same language should preclude you from being on the same board, because that's kind of what it results in, right?
Okay. So again, it's not, yes, it is this whole thing is about conflict of interest, right? And being able to stack the board with things. I hear what you're saying, and it can be dealt with. And again, you know, I don't think you and Sharif are the perfect example for conflict of interest issues. But yeah, I mean, if you think that we need to remove the chapter, and if there's consensus that it's not from the same region of the world, it's from the same specific chapter, and similarly, leaders of the same project.
Again, you're working on the same project, you're working towards the same goals with this people that we work with in the same group. I think if there was a specific thing that you were doing that would benefit that project, that would be a problem, and you'd have to recluse yourself.
What about a cap that keeps, say, 2 people on the same project, just picking something from that list? No more than 2, right? Give them a obvious minority influence if we're concerned about that, right? Because you really need a majority before you can move a board in a particular direction, unless you're just really good at convincing other people to fall over in your, you know, or to follow your plans, if you get what I'm saying. So it maybe the backstop for that is no more than 2 leaders from a project chapter or excuse me, a chapter or a project, blah blah blah. Like maybe that's the backstop. Because if we can keep,
I think
so Matt, you agree with the statement, you just disagree with the number.
Yeah, well, I agree with the thrust of the argument. I'm just wondering if there's a better way to manage that by forcing a minority on the people that may be problematic, right?
I do want to point out one more thing before I yield to Andrew. This isn't just about conflict of interest or a minority of the board trying to, you know, tip things in their own direction. It is also about diversity. And you could have, you know, 7 of the most transparent directors voting on all different directions, but if they're all from the same chapter, that's not going to be a diverse board, no matter how diverse the people are. It doesn't give you coverage of the world. So again, it might not be 1 or 2, but this is the intent here.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as I sit here, I know you probably haven't answered the question, but I do have something that I need to ask as well. Do we do any background checks for directors?
No.
Is that something we can do, or?
It would depend on where they live, because legalities are different in different regions.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is definitely worth something talking about. But before we go there, I will just put a pin in that for a second. Andrew, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Please don't make this too complicated, because the staff aren't really designed to go and look up like business records and who controls what entities. Sometimes the leaders list is not particularly accurate. Whatever you try to do here, just make sure that it's still honoring the voting intentions of the OWASP public. I would like to point out that one of the most fundamental partnerships, if you like, of board members who were working at the same company was Jeff Williams and Dave Wickers. We wouldn't be here today without them. So if there's a real reason for doing this, then obviously go for it. But also look back at our history. We haven't been affected by this. I understand the reasoning for trying to protect ourselves from being taken over, but maybe there's a better way of doing it. I don't know, but please don't make it too hard on the staff, and reducing the diversity of the actual candidates.
Yeah, I think Avi was trying to. I don't think, although it plays in the back of my mind, I don't think Avi was trying to protect against the abuse case that Mark Curfew highlighted was a very real possibility, with someone with a few $1,000s would be able to buy the board. So I don't think that was really what Avi was trying to do with this. I think he was trying to create diversity, but it got very rapidly narrowed down into preventing abuse. And you're right. Yeah, if it wasn't for Dave and Jeff, and they probably wouldn't have stuck to it, except that they were working together as well.
Yeah, the very first OWASP wiki server was in a closet at the Aspect offices, as I recall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can safely say that at that point, Aspect Security had a controlling interest over the foundation. A benevolent dictatorship existed for a while. I'm getting the feeling, Avi, that this motion needs a lot more wordsmithing and a lot more work before it's ready for the board to vote on. Is that the consensus from the board? There's still a lot of discussion to be had there.
I think so. It feels to me like we have general consensus around the thrust of this motion, but I don't know that its wording is sorted out yet. I certainly would like to noodle on some ways to make this. I kind of liked my way out, and I'm very vague on this because I literally thought of it during this discussion. But the idea of putting a backstop on how many from X, but how do you measure X is really tricky. There's some other questions behind that to make that operational that are interesting that we need to think through.
Yeah, and please, I mean, Avi, if you're happy for us to table this discussion, to put this discussion on the shelf for now, please iterate on what's in that Word document. And do remember what Andrew has asked, right? Let's not make it operationally complicated.
I also want to point out that as Ricardo pointed out, the association with an organization that also needs to be better wordsmithed. So yeah, I'm happy to postpone this.
Okay.
Let's get this right. Let's get this right.
Other organizations have approached this. You might want to look at APNIC, which had a very similar issue. They're worried about being taken over. They've recently made some changes. It might be worthwhile reading the changes they made to their own constitution to avoid this problem.
I do want to state that I think that our bylaws make it fairly, the protective aspect is probably less necessary. And what's more necessary is how do we get more diversity in the board? And I think that really has to be, we need to encourage members to stand for the board. People don't want to do this job, and I don't know why. It's just, hours and hours of your life and lots of fighting, and with people that you like, fighting over things that are important to both parties until you want to strangle them. I don't know why people wouldn't want to do this. We're going to cut that out of the recording, right? Because we definitely don't want anybody who we want to run for the board to hear any of that. Actually, forewarned is forearmed, right? There is no other items of business if this discussion has reached its end.
Sorry, I need to point out retroactively, we did not actually read the minutes of the last meeting into this one.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for that. I did kind of get ahead of myself there. So with the approval of the minutes being the last item of business, I'm going to go through the list. And have Glenn, do you approve the minutes from last month's meeting, sorry. Actually, can somebody type that in the chat so Glenn can see it and hear it? In the meantime, Matt,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Ricardo,
Yes.
Vandana,
Yes.
Avi,
Yes.
and I see a yes from Glenn. It came in at the right time. I'm assuming that was a yes for that. And it's a yes from me as well. So Dawn, you can mark us off as having approved those minutes.
Matt, you got it?
I have it.
That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Then I would like to move that we close this board. The next meeting is actually in September. There will be 2 in September.
Yes.
There will be a meeting of the board, and then soon after that, there will be an opportunity for us to talk about what we did in that 3 or 4 days of meetings that we had, and hopefully give the foundation and our community a lot of good news and a lot of this is the way forward. And we can talk about what we're actually going to be able to do to make things better. So with that, I motion that we adjourn. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the guests today. Thank you all for joining us, and we will get the recording uploaded ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all.
No worries. Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye.
I appreciate everyone joining, even from your holiday locations. Avi and Glenn, I know you guys are both on vacation. Would you like to stop the recording, Andrew?
Yes.